Thank you for joining me for this gripping tale of secrets and betrayal. If you enjoy thrilling stories full of twists and suspense, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means so much and helps us continue sharing these incredible stories with you. The night I found the first clue, I had no idea my life was about to unravel. Anna, my wife of 8 years, was always the dependable one. She had a way of making everyone around her feel at ease, and I admired that about her. But in hindsight, it's easy to see how someone so skilled at creating comfort could also weave a web of secrets. It started with a locked drawer in her home office, a detail I'd overlooked for years. One night, as she worked late in another room, I went searching for some old documents. The locked drawer wasn't unusual. Anna was meticulous about keeping things organized, but something about it caught my attention that evening. Why had she never mentioned it? Curiosity got the better of me. I jiggled the drawer, trying to see if it would budge, but it was secure. I considered asking Anna about it but decided against it. For the first time, I felt a seed of doubt take root. Later that week, I noticed other things. Anna's phone was suddenly glued to her side, where it used to sit casually on the counter. Her schedule had inexplicable gaps, and her explanations for them were vague at best. Just errands, she'd say, brushing off my questions with a quick kiss on the cheek. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my instincts told me something was wrong. So I started paying closer attention. One night, as Anna was in the shower, I glanced at her phone. It was locked, of course, a habit she'd only recently picked up, but the notifications on the screen told a story of their own. There were no names, just messages from a generic app, but the language in the previews was strangely formal for work-related conversations. Phrases like "when can we meet?" and "we need to talk" sent a chill down my spine. Determined to find out more, I decided to test the waters. Over dinner, I casually mentioned that a colleague had been caught hiding something from their spouse. "Can you imagine?" said half-laughing. "Keeping secrets like that in a marriage." Anna froze for a fraction of a second before recovering with a smile. "That's awful," she said, her voice light but her eyes wary. "Trust is everything." Her response did little to ease my concerns. As days turned into weeks, the sense of unease grew. I began noticing patterns. How Anna's mood would shift abruptly, how she avoided eye contact during certain conversations, and how her explanations for small things often didn't add up. One evening I brought up the locked drawer. "Hey," I said casually, "what's in that drawer in your office?" "The one that's locked." Anna's reaction was immediate. She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Just boring work stuff," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious," I replied, trying to sound indifferent. But her defensiveness only deepened my suspicions. I knew I needed answers, but confronting Anna outright felt premature. Instead, I decided to gather more information, not realizing that the path I was about to take would lead to a series of revelations I could never have imagined. Anna's defensiveness about the locked drawer only fueled my curiosity. A part of me wanted to let it go, to believe that her explanation was genuine. But deep down I knew that something wasn't right. That weekend, while Anna was out running her now frequent errands, I decided to investigate. It felt wrong to snoop, but the nagging doubt wouldn't let me rest. I rummaged through her office, careful not to disturb anything that might give away my intrusion. When I reached the locked drawer, I noticed something I hadn't before, a faint scratch near the lock, as though it had been forced open before. I decided to leave it untouched for now. If Anna was hiding something, I needed to be cautious. Instead, I shifted my focus to her laptop. Anna rarely used it outside of work, but I figured it might hold some clues. As I booted it up, my heart raced. Her desktop was clean, almost too clean, with only a few innocuous folders. But when I opened her browser, I found a trail, recently visited websites and emails that painted a different picture. The emails weren't incriminating on their own, but the tone was odd. They were addressed to someone named M, and while the language was formal, the frequency of their exchanges suggested something more than a professional relationship. The more I uncovered, the more the pieces of the puzzle began to align. Who was them? Why hadn't Anna mentioned them before? And why were they discussing meeting in person so often? By the time Anna returned home, I was back to pretending everything was fine. My heart pounded as I greeted her, wondering if she could sense the turmoil brewing beneath my calm demeanor. That night I couldn't sleep. Every small detail about our relationship replayed in my mind, each memory tainted by the possibility of betrayal. I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I had to confront her. The next day, as we sat down for breakfast, I decided to test her again. "Hey," I said casually, "I was thinking of organizing your office this weekend. Maybe clean out some of the drawers." Anna's fork paused midair. "Why?" she asked, her tone light but her expression tense. "Just thought it might be helpful," I replied. "You've been so busy lately." Her smile was tight. "That's sweet, but I'll handle it. It's mostly work stuff you wouldn't find interesting." Her response only confirmed my suspicions. Over the next few days, I began piecing together more clues. Anna's phone habits, her mysterious errands, and her increasingly vague explanations all pointed to something being seriously wrong. But the real breakthrough came when I found a key hidden in her jewelry box. It was small, unassuming, and unlike any key I'd seen around the house. My first thought was the locked drawer. Could this be the key? I waited for the right moment, a time when Anna wouldn't be home for hours. When the opportunity finally came, I slipped into her office and inserted the key into the lock. Clicked open effortlessly. What I found inside shook me to my core. Inside the drawer were letters, receipts, and photographs, all connected to M. The letters were written in a way that was ambiguous but deeply personal. The receipts showed purchases Anna had never mentioned, and the photographs revealed meetings between her and a man I didn't recognize. I felt a mixture of anger, confusion, and heartbreak. What was Anna hiding? And why hadn't she told me about this man? Just as I was about to close the drawer, I heard the sound of the front door opening. Anna was home. Anna's sudden return caught me off guard. My heart raced as I hastily shut the drawer, locking it back and slipping the key into my pocket. I barely had time to compose myself before she stepped into the office. "Hey, what are you doing in here?" she asked, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. "Oh, just looking for some printer paper," I said, holding up an empty ream I had grabbed moments earlier. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Next time let me know. I'll grab it for you." The tension in the room was palpable as she lingered for a moment before leaving. I exhaled, realizing how close I'd come to being caught. But now I had evidence, though I still wasn't entirely sure what it meant. That evening, as Anna cooked dinner, I couldn't stop replaying the contents of the drawer in my mind. The letters and photos haunted me. Who was this man? What did their relationship mean? I decided I needed answers. But confronting Anna directly seemed risky. If she was lying to me, she'd likely try to cover it up. Instead, I decided to investigate further. The next morning I called in sick to work, something I rarely did. After Anna left for the day, I began my search. Her emails, her receipts, even her calendar. I scoured everything I could think of. That's when I found it. A hidden folder on her laptop labeled Memories. Inside were more photos, this time of Anna and him together in various places. Cafes, parks, and even what appeared to be a hotel lobby. The images told a story of closeness and familiarity that she had never shared with me. But what stood out most was a note saved as a draft email. It read, "I don't know how much longer I can keep this from him. It's tearing me apart, but I can't lose everything. Please understand." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Anna was clearly torn, but between what? Was it guilt? Fear? And what couldn't she afford to lose? I decided to confront her that evening. No more guessing. No more uncertainty. When she arrived home, I tried to act normal, but I'm sure my demeanor gave away that something was wrong. After dinner, as we sat in the living room, I finally spoke. "Anna, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer," I began. She looked up, her expression guarded. "Course. What's on your mind?" I hesitated, then plunged ahead. Who is M? For a moment she froze, her face a mixture of shock and panic. What are you talking about? She stammered. You know exactly what I'm talking about, I said, my voice firm. The letters, the photos, the emails. I've seen them, Anna. Who is he? Her eyes filled with tears as she tried to respond. It's not what you think, she whispered. Then tell me what it is, I demanded, my patience wearing thin. Anna took a deep breath, struggling to find the words. M is someone I used to know. It's complicated. Complicated. That's not an answer, I shot back. Why are you hiding this from me? What's really going on? She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could handle it on my own. Handle what? I pressed, my frustration boiling over. Her response was barely audible. A mistake I made. A long time ago. Anna's words, a mistake I made. A long time ago, echoed in my ears, leaving me reeling. What did she mean? My mind was racing, but I knew pressing her further while she was already in tears might only push her deeper into her shell. I decided to give her space, but the silence between us was deafening. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop replaying our conversation. Every unanswered question felt like a dagger to my chest. The next morning, Anna was uncharacteristically quiet. She barely touched her breakfast and left the house early, muttering something about needing to clear her head. I decided it was time to take a bolder step. If Anna wouldn't tell me the truth, I would find it myself. The photos, the emails, the cryptic draft, all pointed to a story she wasn't ready to share. I called a private investigator. It was a decision I never thought I'd have to make, but I needed answers. After explaining the situation, the investigator assured me they would dig into Anna's recent activities and find out who M really was. Over the next few days, I tried to act as normal as possible. Anna's mood remained subdued, but she didn't press me about our confrontation. It was as if she was waiting for me to bring it up again, but I wasn't ready. The investigator's first report came 3 days later. It was brief but revealing. Anna had been meeting with a man named Michael at a local cafe every week for the past 3 months. Michael was the M from the photos. My heart sank as I stared at the images the investigator had taken. Anna looked comfortable, even happy, in Michael's presence. They weren't overtly romantic, but there was an undeniable closeness between them. I decided I needed to see this for myself. The investigator told me when Anna was scheduled to meet Michael again, and I planned to confront her there. The day arrived, and my nerves were on edge. I parked across the street from the cafe, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Through the window, I saw Anna sitting at a corner table, laughing softly as Michael leaned in to speak. For a moment I hesitated. Was this really the best way to handle things? But the need for answers outweighed my doubts. I walked into the cafe, my heart pounding. Anna's face went pale the moment she saw me. Michael turned to look at me, confusion flickering across his features. James, Anna stammered, standing up abruptly. What are you doing here? I think the better question is, what are you doing here? I said, my voice calm but laced with anger. Michael looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. I should go, he said, rising from his seat. No, I said firmly. I want to know what's going on. Anna's eyes filled with tears as she turned to Michael. I didn't want it to come out like this, she said, her voice trembling. Come out. I repeated, my stomach nodding. Anna, what is this about? Michael sighed and placed a hand on Anna's shoulder. It's time, Anna, he said gently. She nodded, then turned to me. James, I haven't been honest with you, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael, he's not just someone I know. He's my half-brother. The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. What? I asked, completely thrown off. I didn't know he existed until a few months ago, Anna continued. My mother had him before she met my father, but she gave him up for adoption. Michael reached out to me after finding out who his biological family was. I didn't know how to tell you, so I kept it a secret. Michael nodded. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I just wanted to connect with my sister. The weight of the moment pressed down on me as I tried to process what I had just heard. Why didn't you tell me? I asked Anna, my voice filled with hurt. I was scared, she admitted. Scared of what you'd think. Scared of how it might change things between us. The tension eased slightly as I took a deep breath. While the truth was shocking, it wasn't the betrayal I had feared. But the damage caused by her secrecy was undeniable. The cafe felt like it had turned into a spotlight, with every customer's gaze boring into us as Anna shared her revelation. Michael, her half-brother. The explanation made sense, but the weight of her secrecy lingered heavily between us. As the three of us sat back down, the tension in the air was palpable. I had so many questions, but I knew this conversation needed to be handled delicately. How did this all start? I asked, my tone softer now but still laced with hurt. Michael leaned forward, his voice calm and measured. I hired a private investigator to find my biological family, he explained. When I discovered Anna was my sister, I reached out through a letter. I wanted to be sure she was ready to meet me before we connected. Anna nodded. At first, I wasn't sure what to do. It was such a shock. But when we finally met, I felt this overwhelming sense of connection. It was like finding a missing piece of myself. Her words struck a chord in me. I could understand her need to process such a monumental discovery, but I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal from being left in the dark. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked again, my voice quieter this time. Anna sighed, her eyes brimming with tears. I was scared, James. Scared that you'd think I was hiding something worse. And once I kept the first secret, it became harder to admit the truth. The room grew quiet as her words sank in. I looked at Michael, who was watching me carefully. And what about you? I asked. Why didn't you insist she tell me? Michael hesitated. It wasn't my place to decide when or how Anna should share this with you, he said. I encouraged her to be honest, but I didn't want to force her hand. I leaned back in my chair, processing everything. It wasn't an affair, but the lies and omissions had cut deeply. Trust, once broken, wasn't easy to rebuild. I don't know how to move forward from this, I admitted, my voice heavy with emotion. Anna reached across the table, her hand trembling as she placed it on mine. I'm sorry, James. I never wanted to hurt you. I was just trying to protect you, and myself, from something I didn't fully understand. Her apology was sincere, but it didn't erase the pain. I pulled my hand away gently. We'll need time, I said simply. The days that followed were a blur of mixed emotions. Anna tried to bridge the gap between us, but I kept my distance, unsure of how to reconcile my feelings. Trust wasn't something that could be repaired overnight. Michael, to his credit, gave us space. He sent a polite message thanking me for listening and assuring me he only wanted to know his sister. It was hard to harbor resentment toward him, but the situation still left me uneasy. Anna, however, wasn't ready to give up. She planned a dinner at home, just the two of us, to talk things through. When the night arrived, I walked into the dining room to find the table set with candles and our favorite meal. Anna stood nervously by the table, her hands twisting together. Thank you for coming, she said softly. I nodded and sat down, waiting for her to start. I know I've hurt you, she began, her voice trembling. And I know an apology isn't enough. But I want to make things right. I looked at her, my emotions a swirling mix of anger, sadness, and love. Anna, I don't know if we can go back to how things were, I said honestly. Her face fell, but she nodded. I understand. But I want to try. I'll do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust. The evening ended with a tentative agreement to work through our issues, but the road ahead was far from clear. The cracks in our relationship were visible, but there was still a foundation worth saving, or so I hoped. The days that followed our dinner were filled with cautious attempts at reconciliation. Anna and I agreed to see a therapist together, a neutral ground where we could confront our emotions without fear of escalating into arguments. It wasn't an easy step, but it felt like the only way forward. During our first session, the therapist asked a question that struck a chord. What do you both want from this relationship moving forward? Anna answered first, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I want to rebuild what we had. I want James to trust me again, and I want us to feel like a team. Her words felt genuine, but they also highlighted the weight of the journey ahead. When it was my turn to speak, I hesitated, searching for the right words. I want to feel like I can trust her again, I finally said. But I also need to figure out if that's even possible. The therapy sessions forced us to confront the root of our issues: fear, insecurity, and communication failures. Anna admitted that her secrecy about Michael stemmed from a deep-seated fear of rejection. She had always struggled with vulnerability, and hiding the truth felt safer than facing the unknown. For my part, I had to confront my own patterns. I realized I had a tendency to avoid conflict, often brushing off concerns instead of addressing them head-on. This dynamic had allowed small misunderstandings to fester into larger problems. The progress was slow, but each session brought us closer to understanding each other. Outside therapy, Anna worked hard to rebuild my trust. She became more transparent about her feelings and actions, often going out of her way to keep me informed. At first, it felt unnatural, like an overcorrection, but over time it began to feel sincere. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching an old movie, Anna turned to me and said, "I miss this. Just being with you like this." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything we'd been through. I reached for her hand, holding it tightly. "I miss it too," I admitted. Michael, meanwhile, had become a distant yet lingering presence in our lives. He respected our space but sent occasional messages to Anna, keeping her updated on his life. While I didn't fully trust him, I couldn't deny that his intentions seemed genuine. One day, Anna approached me with a suggestion. "Michael wants to meet you," she said cautiously. "I think it could help, but only if you're ready." The idea was daunting, but I knew it was a step I needed to take to move forward. We arranged a casual meeting at a coffee shop, and to my surprise, it wasn't as uncomfortable as I'd imagined. Michael was polite and seemed genuinely invested in Anna's happiness. As time passed, the wounds in our relationship began to heal. They didn't disappear entirely. Scars remained, reminding us of what we'd endured, but they no longer defined us. One evening, during a quiet dinner at home, Anna looked at me with a smile that felt both familiar and new. "Thank you for giving us another chance," she said softly. I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. "Thank you for fighting for it," I replied. While the journey hadn't been easy, it had taught us both the importance of honesty, communication, and perseverance. Our relationship wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was real and it was ours. As this story ends, I want to thank you for coming along on this emotional journey. If this story touched you in any way, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us share more stories like this, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, take care and cherish the relationships that matter most.